Well, really want you to encourage you to send your questions in as quickly as possible. So you can just enter them in on the screen, or you can send them to stfeedback@moh.govt.nz. This is your chance to ask anything about the Mid-Central prototype and system transformation. Can't promise I'll be able to answer everything, but we will send you out an answer as quickly as possible after this if I can't answer it on the spot. So we've had a few questions sent in earlier, and the first one is from Anne. Is capability funding used for support which is different from the funding provided for the essential daily support needs of the disabled person? Can you please explain this more? So the capability funding, we've got two funds, one for disabled people and one for whānau. And the purpose of the funding is not for an individual disabled person, but to spend or to deliver training or information to a group of disabled people or family members. And so it can be about anything that people think is important to them to be able to live the types of lives they want. So for example, it can be anything from a kitchen table where a group of parents get together to talk about and think about different ideas, or it can be a formal kind of training course like a governance training for disabled people, or it can be something like learning about how to manage staff and what are your obligations under the Health and Safety Act. It can be things like wanting parents, a group of parents wanting to know how to talk to their young people with an intellectual impairment about sexuality. So it can be a whole range of different things. And with that, the regional leadership group here gets to decide what are the priorities for capability building, and then we go out to the community and seek applications for that. So it's not funding for an individual person, it's funding for a group of people to receive training. Following on from this, this is from Anne as well, am I right in thinking that the disabled person can apply for this for themselves, and then whānau can also apply for capability funding for support for themselves to better support their disabled family member? So you're right, Anne, in thinking there are two different funds. So one that is targeting or building, developing and delivering training for disabled people, and one that's delivering for whānau members. So the sorts of things that whānau members might be interested in is one of the things we've thought about is that sometimes for families, when they first find out that their young child has an impairment, there's a process that they need to go through, and they need to talk to somebody to be able to sort of adjust their expectations to what life's going to be like. So that kind of ability to have counselling with somebody might be the sort of thing that a group of families might suggest would be something that would be good to be funded by the family capability funding. So there really is it's a range of things that can be funded, and it's really up to people in Mid-Central to identify what it is that they think they need to build their skills and leadership to be able to build the kind of lives they want. So just for people who are just joining, just encourage you to send your questions in. What we do tend to find in these sessions is it takes people a bit of time to warm up, and so we usually get by on pre-prepared questions that were sent in earlier till about halfway through, and then suddenly we get a whole heap of questions through. So really encourage you to send your questions in early, either just enter them into the screen or send them to stfeedback@moh.govt.nz. Another question that was sent in earlier, will the budget allocation be tax-free and GST-free? So what we are actually working through, and there's a paper going to Cabinet in the next few weeks, is about ensuring that disability support funding is not seen as income for tax purposes or for eligibility to other government assistance. So for example, benefits or disability allowance. And so we've got proposals in that paper, and also about looking at what we can do around addressing the DST issues, which was particularly a problem when we did the first demonstration in Christchurch. So can't tell you the exact solution yet, but there are decisions being sought from Cabinet in the next 3 weeks on that. Also had, if the disabled person chooses to have the entire budget paid to their bank account, how is this treated with regards to current WIN support, such as the supported living payment and or disability allowance? So that is what I was talking about with that paper, is that we are putting up a proposal to be really, so that we get a decision that disability support funding is for disability support and is not treated as income, and therefore does not affect people's eligibility for other government assistance, including benefits. Also been asked, what paperwork will be required for accountability as to use the funds by the disabled person? So what we're looking at, and again with the funding, we're still going to Cabinet again in the next 3 weeks to get final agreement to the funding allocation processes. But what we're looking at is having a funding agreement that is something that the disabled person and or their family signs up to with the funding coordinator, and that sets out what the funding can be used for and what information needs to be provided. But what we're really looking for is if people get money directly in a bank account, that it's in a separate bank account, and that it's really clear what the funding was used for, but having a kind of light touch monitoring. So we want to make it so that disabled people and whānau don't need to provide lots of information. So over the last few weeks, it's been really exciting that we've got the 2 directors have started. So Lorna Sullivan started as the director for the Disabled People and Whānau supporting team. So that's the team that is made up of connectors, a network builder, a manager and a director. And so she started on the 10th of July, and a lot of you will know Lorna. She's been really involved in the disability sector, particularly with family groups and disabled people's groups, and has also worked for a number of providers. Over the last 5 years, she's been in Queensland implementing National Disability Insurance Scheme there, and so brings a lot of things about what to do and what not to do, which is great. And the other director is Marshall Tutou, who is the director of the system enabling team, and so that is the team that is made up of disability information people, government liaisons, funding coordinators, administrators, and a business insights person. Marshall comes from a provider background, and he was also part of the regional leadership group in Mid-Central, and brings, it's really great to have him come into this role because he's been involved since the beginning, and also brings a lot of enthusiasm for this work. We've also been recruiting for all of the other roles, particularly connectors, and for the network builder, for government liaisons, disability information people, and funding coordinators. So we're expecting people to start in those roles on the 27th of August. Had a question from Jeremy via email. When will disabled people be sent information about the system transformation prototype, explaining what the changes will be from 1st of October and how will it all work? Well, disabled people who are currently receiving disability support in Mid-Central region, all of them were sent a letter last week that provides the first set of information about, hey, changes are happening on the 1st of October and what it will mean for you. And we will be sending more information, so there'll be another letter before the prototype starts in October, and there will also be opportunities to join in sessions like this, or face-to-face forums, or to see the monthly videos so that you can find out more information about what's happening. I've had another question from Jeremy. If a disabled person does not have anyone to accompany them to an appointment but needs a person to support them, will someone be able to do this under the new system? So one of the things that we have got is making sure that we've got information available to people about advocates and who can support a disabled person or family when they are talking to another an agency or another organisation. So we're going to have information on the website about what kind of advocacy and advocates are available in Mid-Central region, but we've also got some funding available to ensure that there are advocates where we currently don't have them. And Jeremy's asked a further question about how will the disabled person organise this to work in with the scheduled appointment. That's probably getting to a level of detail that we haven't worked through exactly yet, but that will be part of looking at when we either contract or organise for funding to be available for advocacy, is to work through exactly how that would happen, about who would contact who to make that happen. And I think most likely is that we'll have information available on the website, and the disabled person will be able to contact the potential advocates, or a connector or a government liaison could help the disabled person to do that if they're not able to do that for themselves. I've had a question from Seth via email. What will we know about connectors before we meet them? Will there be information about them somewhere? So what we're planning is to have information available about connectors on the website, and that will be in a range of formats so that people can find out. So some of the things is we're thinking it'd be quite good to have a video of the connectors talking about themselves, their experiences, and so people can get to know them a little bit. But we're also thinking that we will make opportunities for disabled people and families to meet connectors and to get to know them or see them present to talk about themselves. So, and there will also be orientation sessions available for people when they come into the system, and they can be face-to-face or via the website, and so then people will also be able to find out information about connectors through there. Welcome to people who are just joining. Just a reminder, please get your questions in. We're about almost halfway through, and this is the time when people start to think about the questions that they want to ask. And so just really encouraging people to get their questions in now. I'm just having a slight technical hitch at the moment. So just really encouraging people to send their questions through, and you can do that either by just putting it into the screen or sending them to stfeedback@moh.govt.nz. Just hang on, we've got a more old-fashioned way of getting information. Will everyone get access to connectors in the new system? And the answer to that is everyone will be able to have access to a connector if they want to, but they don't have to have a connector, and if they don't want to. And there'll be 3 types of connectors that we're trying in the prototype. So we'll have some who are employed, and we will also have the ability for people to go through non-government organisations. It's fine, I'm back up online. So there will be the idea of having that you can go to an organisation that doesn't provide disability support, for example, a whānau or a provider. And then the third is that some people might want to use someone who's in their networks already, so someone that they know who they think would be a really good connector, and with that they'll be able to talk to the director or manager about that person, and they will be able to give them the okay, and then we'll be able to pay for their time to do that. So just a reminder that please get your questions in. You can either fill them in on the screen or send them to stfeedback@moh.govt.nz. Okay, other people having the technical problems at the moment. I've had a question, will disabled people be on the regional governance group? Yes, they will. So on the governance group is going to be made up of 9 people, and 6 of those are from the regional leadership group, 3 disabled people, 2 whānau representatives and a provider. There'll be a workforce representative, and then 2 independent members. So what we've wanted is to have more than 50% of the governance group being disabled people or whānau representatives. So looking forward to being able to, we've gone to ministers to get agreement to the first round of people so that's the 6 from the regional leadership group and the workforce representative, and we're just looking currently for 2 more independent members who bring some additional skills, particularly around managing funding or having oversight over funding, machinery of government and understanding how government works, and also we're looking for people who bring a te ao Māori perspective to the governance group. So expect to be able to tell you more about that over the next month. So just had a question from how soon will it be until we can meet connectors? So we're expecting the connectors to start on the 27th of August, but for their first 5 or 6 weeks, they will be being inducted and being trained on being a connector. And so I'm imagining that when we get to our kind of September message, monthly message, we'll probably get the connectors to be being part of the message and introduce themselves. We're also looking at the possibility that we might have connectors starting to work with some disabled people as part of their induction and training. And we will have information available about connectors before the 1st of October, so that will be available on the website. But we won't be working with connectors, connectors won't be working with disabled people in whānau in the full new system until the 1st of October. I've got a question from Simon. How will disabled people be able to join in with the Mid-Central Regional Leadership Group for events? So there are some Facebook pages and information, and I actually don't have it here, but what I'll do is make sure that my able assistants will put that information on up on the website or on below this, so that you can see the contact details to be able to find out about the Disabled People's Core Group and the whānau Core Group, and so they're the ones who organise events. But also, so the core group meets monthly, and anybody can attend those meetings. So please do get in touch with them. Just had a question from Hamish asking about the money for the new system. So you might remember that that the funding in the new system is made up of existing funding plus funding that we got as part of decisions and as part of a TAG contingency, and 6.485 million of that money is available for direct support to disabled people and whānau. And we also we have a paper going to Cabinet in early September, which will seek decisions on what funding comes across from other government agencies. The final bit about that with the money is just a reminder too that we're still getting decisions on the funding allocation processes, and so there'll be information available about that in late August. So I've just had a question from Brett via email. Will there be similarities between Waikato and Mid-Central? I think the short answer is that the Mid-Central prototype builds on what's worked really well in the Waikato and what's worked well in Christchurch, but also what we learnt from other things we've tried in New Zealand and from overseas. So there are lots of similarities to Waikato, and some of the things are things like having a connector. The process for actually getting to a connector might look slightly different. And having in the Waikato, you could have your disability support funding in a bank account, and that is one of the options available in Mid-Central, but there's actually more options for managing the funding. New features of the system, so the capability funding, we didn't have a capability funding in Waikato, and some of the things like the connected support across government. In Mid-Central, you'll be able to do things like fill in your MSD forms with a connector and a government liaison will arrange for it to be processed in the background. So that's some of the sort of new things. So there are definite similarities, and particularly things like the having access to a connector. They are the same as things in the Waikato, but there are some differences too. So we're not using the self-supported assessment that was used in the Waikato, for example. Just had an email from Gabby. We're finding that many parents of the very high and complex need individuals won't have sufficient funds to enable the disabled individual to live 24/7 with full-time support. So in the same way that we do now, there will be the funding available for people who do need 24/7 support. And that is, so different people have different needs, and there will still be the same sort of, the same funding available within the system for people who do need that. So I think we've got the same funding that's in the system currently, but it's also about thinking about what are the range of options and having access to a connector to work through what are the different ways that you might provide support, and what are the things that are most important to you as a disabled person and family, and then looking at how you might achieve putting that support in place. So I think the connector role will be a really valuable part of people thinking about what is it they really want in their lives, how do they build on their strengths, and what is the range of options, rather than just thinking about residential care or living in the community. What's sort of the range of options there to put support in place that might work for you and your family? Also had from Gabby saying, we're very concerned that those with severe sensory issues of autism who are currently in residential care will not get options to move out with support. Some are scared to talk up about what they want for fear of parents getting upset. So one of the things is we are, and we will have connectors working with people so that people do get to find out about some of the different options and have a chance to think about what they would like to do with their lives and whether they'd like to make changes to their support. And part of that connector role is to work with not just the disabled person, but with their whānau, and to help the whānau hear the disabled person's voice when sometimes they may be thinking about how do they protect the person and therefore not necessarily hear what the person's what's important to the person. So that is part of a really important part of what the connector does, is to be able to support the family to hear what's important to the disabled person and what it is that they want in their life. Gabby's also made a comment about we need to do more about supported decision making and access to augmentative and alternative communication. It's very important we have a fundamental right to a form of communication that suits us under Article 21 of the Convention, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. 100% agree with you, Gabby, that one of the things we really are committed to putting supported decision making in practice in the prototype, and we will be looking at how we can do that in every stage of the process. Just had a email from Hamish has just posted, will we see the paper about the money before it goes to the Beehive? So with cabinet papers, we do some targeted consultation with particular groups, but usually, and in this case, it will be available to people so that they can see what's in it after a decision has been made. So we do seek some input, and there's been been a working group that's worked on the funding, and we have received feedback via virtual testing and from a range of people that we've tested the funding allocation tools and processes with. And once a decision's been made, that cabinet paper, we'd expect that cabinet paper to be made available, but I can't tell you exactly when that will be at this stage. Thanks, people. That's been great to see lots of questions come through in the last few minutes. We've got 5 minutes left, so this is your last chance to get in questions. You can either just type it into the screen or send them to stfeedback@moh.govt.nz. So just waiting to see if there's any last minute questions. Oh, one coming through our more basic technology, the pen and paper variety. Okay. Right, so just about what's the work going forward. So at the moment, we're really focused on getting ready for induction. So when all of the new staff members start at the end of August, and making sure we're ready to train them on their new roles and on all of the things that they need to know. To support that, we are working on business processes and all of the developing materials and information to support those. And we're also developing the website. Personally, I've been working a lot on the government interfaces, so making sure that we've got documented and agreed with government agencies about how it will work in practice between the disability support system and other government agencies. So we are just getting the kind of how that will work in practice signed off, and over the next few weeks we're focusing on making sure we've got some of the practical steps in place. Lots of other things. We're working a lot on making sure that we've worked through the issues around workforce and that there's information getting out to workforce about the changes and what it will mean for them, but also making sure that we've developed material for disabled people and families around employment arrangements versus contracting arrangements. What are your obligations if you're an employer? We're also working with providers in terms of varying contracts and new contracts. Lots and lots of work going on. Just had something posted by Michael. What potential alternative options will disabled people living in care homes have if funding is too limited for them to move out? So that's one of the things that we're looking at in the prototype, and certainly what we've learned in Waikato is that there are other options that people have gone into boarding situations and a range of different things. And so we'll be looking at what are the sorts of alternative housing arrangements for disabled people in Mid-Central. And so we've been talking to people like Housing New Zealand and the City Council, who also has some housing. But it is one of the things that we're hoping to learn a lot more about what people are looking for, because that's the sort of information that can help inform future planning and planning around what to put in place for disabled people. I've got a question here about, is it just for people from high school to 21 or any age? So in terms of who's eligible for the prototype, it's for anybody who is eligible for disability support services funded by the Ministry of Health, and that can be from when a baby is born right up to your 100. So it can be throughout the age group. And the question was, I'm 36. If you live in your own home, can you join in Enabling Good Lives if you have very high needs? Yes, so everybody on the 1st of October, anybody who is currently receiving disability support services funded by the Ministry of Health in Mid-Central will become part of the prototype, and will start to, will be part of the new system. Well, it's just about to turn 7 o'clock. So thank you again for all of your questions, and if you didn't get a chance or you think of something after this, please feel free to email us to stfeedback@moh.govt.nz and we'll get the answer back to you. Thank you.